Rain hammered the tin roof like stones, and Amara stood in the doorway with her school bag pressed to her chest. She was 16, shivering, shoes full of muddy water, eyes fixed on her mother's face. Josephine did not meet her eyes. She kept looking at Benson, the new husband, and at his two small children who were already sitting on the only bed. "There is no room," Josephine said. "Pack your things. You must go." The words felt sharp, like cold air in Amara's throat. Behind the curtain, her younger siblings peeked out, afraid to speak. Amara wanted to beg. She wanted to ask for one more night, for a corner on the floor, for a dry blanket. But Benson crossed his arms and turned away. The rain grew heavier, washing the alley, filling it with brown water. Amara slid the strap of the bag over her shoulder, feeling how light it was, how empty. A shirt. 2 books. A pen with little ink. She stepped outside, and the door closed behind her. For a moment she stood very still, letting the rain soak her hair and her skirt, letting the cold teach her something she would not forget. She looked up at the small window where the curtain moved once and then stilled. She thought of school, of the smell of chalk, of the sound of morning bells. She wiped her face, even though the rain hid her tears, and she made a promise in her heart. She would leave, but she would never come back begging. Amara learned quickly how small the world could feel when you had nowhere to sleep. Nights were spent in a half-finished building with bare pillars and no doors, where rain crept in and the cold held on until the sun climbed. She curled against a concrete pillar and tucked her school bag under her head like a pillow. Some nights she lay awake listening to rats and the distant calls of boda riders, and other nights she slept as if the sleep itself could hide her from the day. Food came from the market. Street vendors sold hot mandazzi at dawn, and when the stall owners cleaned up they tossed leftovers into a plastic bag. Amara learned which vendors were kind and which were stingy. She ate the warm edges that were still soft and saved a little for the next morning when she could. Work came in bits. She washed clothes for a lady who lived near the river, scrubbing collars until her fingers went white and her nails split. She carried heavy sacks for traders, balancing them on her head across the market, and earned coins that sometimes paid for soap and sometimes did not. She learned to smile while her body ached, because a smile could win a small favor or an extra mandazzi. Some days she ran errands for a tailor, fetching thread and buttons or holding fabric steady while the needle moved fast. Some nights she scavenged plastic and cardboard that she could sell the next week. It was not a life she had wanted, but it taught her the value of small things: a dry pair of socks, a warm cup of tea, a promise kept. Then there was Papa Dan. He ran a tiny mechanic shop where oil stained the concrete and radios hummed old songs. He was a big man with rough hands and a laugh that came easy. One afternoon Amara was sweeping the street near his shop when he waved her in. "You can sweep here," he said, "and I will give you food." She did not ask for money. She took the broom like a gift. The shop became a classroom she did not expect. While she swept, customers sat on low stools and talked business. Between the clinks of metal and the hiss of a tire pump she began to hear a new phrase: online jobs. At first the words meant nothing. Then one man described how someone in Kisumu sent designs to a customer in the UK and received money on a small card. Another spoke of work that did not need a fancy office, only a phone and steady hands. Amara listened with her broom leaning against her hip and felt a tiny flame of hope inside her chest. For the first time since the rain that pushed her out, she imagined a future that did not begin at the end of someone else's bed. She started watching the way people looked at their screens. She asked small questions and saved the answers in her head like seeds, certain that if she planted them she might grow something new. She promised herself she would learn. Amara treated the old phone like a map to a new life. Someone from Papa Dan's shop had given it to her and she kept it close, charging it when she could and guarding it like treasure. She found a free community center in Westlands where a volunteer taught basic computer and phone skills. The room had mismatched chairs and slow internet, but it was full of people who wanted to learn. Amara sat at the back and watched, then practiced alone until her thumbs ached. She learned to crop photos, pick fonts, place text, and change colors. She studied free tutorials, copied designs she liked, and put together small samples on the phone. At first she made simple flyers for boda riders and small kiosks, asking only a little money or sometimes trading for food. Each flyer made her bolder. She saved screenshots to build a small portfolio on the device. When a rider posted a flyer and more customers came, word spread. One morning a woman on a matatu saw Amara's work and asked where she learned to design. The woman ran a cosmetics shop in Kisumu and she needed new posters for an upcoming promotion. Amara agreed to try. She rode many matatus and sent her designs through the phone, checking with the shop owner by calls and quick messages. The owner liked the colors and the simple layout so much that she paid Amara more than any coin Amara had seen at once, sending money through mobile transfer. Amara remembered the shock the first time the phone rang with a transfer notification and a number higher than she expected blinked on the screen. She bought a small notebook to track orders. She used the payment to buy a better phone battery, print a few test flyers, and pay for a short online course to learn a stronger layout technique. Each shilling she earned went straight back into work. With careful saving and a growing list of small clients, she set up a tiny agency in her name. She called friends who could write short texts and one who knew a little about social media. They worked from a borrowed corner of Papa Dan's shop, taking turns on the old phone and a second-hand tablet. Amara learned invoicing, how to ask for deposits, and how to answer a customer with calm and confidence. The work was always busy and often exhausting, but it taught her how money moved and how trust grew. She taught herself to be steady when a client changed their mind and to keep her word when deadlines came. Most of all, she learned that every small job was a step, and every step could lead to a bigger door. She worked late into the night by borrowed light, editing designs while the neighborhood slept. Sometimes she skipped meals to pay for data. She celebrated small wins by buying a cheap cake and sharing with the friends who helped. Word of mouth grew faster than any ad. Customers began to trust the agency name she picked on a rainy day. She never stopped saving and kept learning new small useful skills. She kept dreaming but kept working, and that balance began something real. Amara's small agency slowly became a name people remembered across cities and then across countries. As orders grew, she hired 3 friends who had helped her in Papa Dan's shop. They shared one second-hand laptop and an old printer at first, then a donor from a local program gave them a newer computer. They learned to send files and meet deadlines. AfriDesign Hub started as a name on a cheap business card and it grew into a team that spoke to customers in South Africa, Ghana, and the UK. Clients found them through social media and referrals. Work became more professional. Payment arrived through mobile transfers and international cards. With each project the team improved, making brand kits, posts, and simple websites. Their prices were fair and their work was honest, and soon the small agency had steady income. Remembering nights with nothing, Amara managed money carefully. She saved and reinvested in better tools and a small office. Her team grew, with young people from the neighborhood joining and learning practical skills. Each success felt real and quiet, like a light turned on for someone who had lived in darkness. A local article with her photo spread fast and people called it the story of the homeless teen who built an empire. Someone in the UK posted it and the post moved across feeds like wildfire. Messages poured in, offers for partnerships, invitations to speak, and simple notes from strangers saying they were proud. With more work came choices. Amara bought an apartment in Upper Hill and a Land Cruiser to travel to clients and programs she wanted to support. She used some profits to start a charity for abandoned teenagers offering short training in design, money skills, and phone-based work, and opened its doors on Saturdays for young people who could not afford weekday programs. She set a rule that the charity would pay for learning and basic needs. Some clients donated, offered internships, or hired graduates. The charity had small successes. A boy learned to code and a girl made flyers for her market stall and helped her mother. Amara shared those wins but refused to let fame change her. She stayed direct with clients, paid staff fair wages, and kept learning. The empire and the stories was never meant as a show of riches. It proved steady work, careful saving, and asking for small chances can build something larger than fear. Her life had changed, and others changed with her, one small job at a time. The morning the knock came, Amara was sorting a stack of printed flyers and answering messages when Josephine walked into the small office with Benson and the two children in tow, like visitors who expected applause. Josephine put on a wide smile and held her head high as if she had come to claim a prize. Benson's shoes were clean and his shirt looked new. The children looked around with hungry curiosity at the computers and the little team of young people who had become her staff. Josephine moved through the room as if she owned the air, telling anyone who would listen, "This is my daughter, the millionaire." People stopped and stared. Some whispered. Amara felt every eye land on her the way light falls on a single chair in a quiet house. They sat down at a small table and the team, unsure what to do, brought coffee. Josephine took a careful sip and traded the proud smile for a hand that reached for her cup like it wanted more. She talked fast about family, about duty, and about how hard life had been. Then she reached straight toward the reason she had come. She said Amara must buy a house for them, pay for Benson's business, and make sure the children never wanted for anything. Her voice was soft but steady, like a list read aloud so everyone would agree it was reasonable. She called it family duty, as if money was a debt owed by blood. The room felt close and loud and small. Amara watched her mother's face when she named each demand. She felt a slow heat rise behind her ribs, the same heat that had driven her to learn, to skip sleep, to save every coin. The team waited for Amara to answer. Her hands, the hands that had learned to steady a phone and to count receipts, rested on the edge of the table. She thought of nights in the half-finished building and of the tiny friends who had helped her along the way. She remembered promises she had made to herself about hard work and boundaries. Josephine kept talking, painting need into duty, but there was also a new tone in her words, a taste of expectation that felt like entitlement. The children played with a pen. Benson cleared his throat as if he had rehearsed his lines. Around them the office hummed with a careful silence. In that quiet, Amara tasted everything she had earned and everything she might lose with one quick yes. She opened her mouth to speak, and in that small space between the last sip of coffee and her first word, the room seemed to hold its breath. Amara reached into her drawer and took out an old phone, the same one she had kept long after it stopped looking new. Her fingers moved steady as she tapped the screen and the room filled with a shaky clip from years before. On the small screen Josephine sat on the edge of the bed, the house dark behind her, and her voice was soft but final. "You are on your own now," she said, and in the video Amara could be seen standing with a small bag while rain hit the window. The sound of rain in the clip matched the memory in the room and for a moment everyone listened only to that recorded voice. The office, full of people who had watched Amara grow, fell silent. Josephine's smile faded as she watched herself say words she had thought were gone. Benson's jaw tightened and the children looked from their mother to Amara with wide eyes. Amara did not shout. She let the video end and then she spoke quietly and clearly. She said she would not give money to people who demanded it. She explained that she had worked hard for every coin and that she had learned to protect what she had so she could help more people in the long run. Then she offered something different. She told them she would sponsor the children's school fees through her foundation. She said the foundation would pay for uniforms, books, and school fees directly to the school. She said there would be rules. The children must attend school, show up on time, and let the foundation check their progress. The foundation would also provide counseling and a small allowance for school needs. No cash would go directly into the family pocket. Any business support for Benson would require a clear plan, a budget, and evidence that he had already tried small steps to improve his work. Amara said she would help them stand on their own feet, but she would not let anyone spend her future. Josephine's face changed slowly as the words landed. Pride and hope had been in her first visit. Now shame and fear moved across her features. Benson rose to his feet, his voice loud, telling Amara she was being unfair. He accused her of forgetting where she came from. The team watched, quiet and tense. The children began to cry softly, then Josephine's shoulders shook and she covered her mouth with her hand. She looked at Amara with a new, raw kind of pleading and then with a careful thought that came too late. Slowly, without a grand apology, Josephine nodded and said she would accept the help under those rules. Benson stormed out. The children hugged Amara with small, uncertain arms. She held them for a moment, steady and kind, and then she let them go back to their mother. She had closed one door and opened another, but on her terms. She had kept the hard line that had kept her alive and offered a safer path for the children she once hoped to protect. Benson stormed out and the office seemed to breathe again. Josephine sat very still, the pride she had worn earlier softening into regret. The children looked between them, unsure which face to trust. Amara felt no joy in his departure. She felt steady. She opened her phone and wrote one line, simple and true: family is earned by love, not demanded by blood. She posted it with the photo of her younger self and the old clip from the rainy night. The post told a clear story and people recognized it at once. Messages came like rain, first from neighbors, then from strangers, then from pages that shared it quickly. People wrote about their own mothers and hard times. Journalists picked it up. Influencers made short videos saying they were proud. Donations arrived for the foundation she had started, small at first and then larger, enough to pay for months of school fees for children who had never had steady pencils or uniforms. A few friends with shops offered apprenticeships and a school offered a training partnership. Josephine watched the messages on her phone and at last nodded when Amara's team explained the rules. She accepted help for the children under those terms and asked quietly for less than she first demanded. Amara agreed to protect the money and to protect her life. She set clear limits and kept them. The story moved from shame to learning, and across towns and borders people talked about the quiet choice that protected both a young woman's future and the children she still cared about. Within days the message had been shared across Africa, reaching people who sent money, school supplies, and offers to help run the foundation. The attention changed her life but not her rules. She kept her promise, staying firm.